Straight onto the newspapers. As we've been hearing today, the Rafah crossing has been open for the first time in 25 days. Foreign nationals and those seriously injured crossing. What are the papers then saying about it, Leo?
Yeah, Stuart, this is the front page of the Eye this morning. 400 escape from Gaza hell. It comes as the Rafah crossing was opened for the first time since the 7th of October, allowing 76 seriously injured Palestinians to make that journey, as well as 335 foreign nationals. Rafah is expected to continue staying open to let those seriously injured and foreign nationals leave, but the lists of those allowed to cross will have to be agreed beforehand between Egypt and Israel. I want to show you some Arabic press this morning. This is Al Aram, which is Egypt's paper of record. They say that local hospitals in North Sinai have been put on a state of alert. An additional field hospital has been set up in Rafah City with 50 beds, so that raised the total of beds to 350. This is in the New Arab this morning, which is a London-based Arabic paper. They say that some of those casualties were so severe that they actually died on that journey. And the reason it's so critical for those critically injured to make that crossing is that the WHO says that more than a third of Gaza's hospitals are not functioning, while the rest are only partly working and are overwhelmed by casualties. And according to Gaza's health ministry, more than 20,000 people have been injured so far, Stuart.
You've been looking at one Israeli paper as well, haven't you, Leo, which is focusing on soldier casualties.
Yeah, so this is the Jerusalem Post, the front page of the Jerusalem Post this morning. IDF casualties in Gaza continue to mount. We'll look a bit more closely inside at this analysis piece. Can the public withstand a steady drumbeat of fallen soldiers? It notes that yesterday was a particularly dark day for Israel, with 15 soldiers losing their lives. The central question that it posed by this piece is, why did Israel not act sooner? This piece goes on to explain that Israel has a tremendous sensitivity to fallen soldiers, with Israel fully engaged inside Gaza and fighting Hamas there. Will the public be ready to accept the inevitable casualties that are to follow? According to this, the conflict is very much seen as a war of necessity, not one of choice. If Israel, for example, had launched their incursion into Gaza a few months ago, then each fallen soldier would have been the subject of political debate. But once Hamas carried out that attack on the 7th of October, it made it easier for the country to absorb the losses because they see them as having a purpose. The significance of the sacrifice also playing a part for society being able to accept the casualties. This piece states it needs to know that these casualties are moving the goal forward.
Let's move away from the Middle East for this next story, to France, in fact, where reporters highlighted the country's vulnerabilities to espionage.
This is in Le Parisien this morning, a report from the Parliamentary Delegation for Intelligence. It's highlighted France's vulnerabilities to espionage by China, Russia, even the US, and reports that France is not sufficiently armed to deal with foreign influences. It highlights Russia with its attempts to destabilise democracy and China, amongst others. But it also adds that France's allies are not necessarily their friends either, and certain methods are used by the US to capture data and undermine France's economic security. It's recommended that those who influence French public life on behalf of a foreign power should be registered, as is the case in the US, Canada and Australia. That would make it easier to justify deportations in the event of a breach of the rule. Deportations very rare in France today. They've also called for better data algorithmic techniques so that foreign intelligence services can be better identified.
Leo's going to finish over the channel, not too far from here, in the UK, where a certain former Prime Minister is making the headlines once again.
I think we can all guess who it is, that
Probably.
former UK Prime Minister, of course, Boris Johnson, on the front of the Daily Star. Can we kill COVID by blowing a hairdryer up our hooters? This is a real question that was asked by him, according to his former aide, Dominic Cummings. This all comes during an inquiry into the government's handling of the pandemic. Apparently, Johnson shared a video of someone putting a hairdryer up their nose and that said that it could kill COVID. He asked his aides if this was possible. Just a number of revelations that have taken place during this inquiry. I'll show you the front page of The Guardian this morning. They have this: lack of number 10 diversity led to women's deaths. So this actually comes from Helen McNamara, who's a former top civil servant. She said that a lack of women in number 10 meant that there was a lack of provision for those suffering from domestic abuse during lockdowns and led directly to several deaths. I'll show you, and I'll finish with the Daily Telegraph. COVID rules were broken every day in number 10. That comes from McNamara as well. She told the COVID inquiry that hundreds of civil servants and government ministers were likely to have broken the rules every day, and followed up with a quote, "I would find it hard to pick just one day where the regulations were followed properly inside that building." The full report from that inquiry is expected sometime next summer, Stuart.
So many swear words coming out during that inquiry as well.
I decided to leave them out, actually.
Yes, exactly. Probably better. Thank you very much, Leo. Leo, we're good with the papers for us on France 24.